Right, welcome everyone to the Wilton School District, Monday, February 12th, 2018. School board meeting. The mission of the Wilton Community School District is to provide an education that encourages continual progress, the improvement of one's abilities, expansion of one's interests and knowledge, and the growth of one's character. Joy, could I have call to order roll call, please?
Linda Duncan.
Here.
Tony Hurd.
Here.
Gary Maurer.
Here.
Rob Metzger.
Here.
And Tara Owen.
Here. All right, agenda approval. Any additions, changes, or corrections, Mr. Burnett?
Nope. Move to approve the agenda.
I second.
All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we will do the minutes approval. We'll do the January 8th regular meeting first.
Move to approve the minutes from January 8th. Second.
All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Secondly, the January 24th public forum.
Motion to approve public forum meetings, minutes.
Second.
All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next, the January 24th work session.
Motion to approve the January 24th work session minutes.
Second.
All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Lastly, the February 7th work session.
Move to approve the minutes from the February 7th work session. Second.
All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, on to public forum. Mr. Burnett?
We're really excited to have Mr. Buchwald and Mr. Grunder here tonight. We've got a basketball game we need to get to here after that. So we have Mr. Buchwald and Mr. Grunder talk about their skinny class they taught the first semester, which was extremely popular and I think very informative. And I appreciate them coming tonight just to give a little bit of an overview of it. And I guess I'll just turn it over to them, how things went and what they thought.
So the idea was actually Brad's, and I'll give him all the credit. He came to me wanting to do a local history class because he had all these contacts and he had been around the community for a long time. But he needed a history teacher to do it. He'd have to have to skew it in the system. And so I didn't really have a great idea yet, and so I'm like, yeah, let's try it out. And so we got together last June, right at the end of the school year, and we kind of broke down the businesses we wanted to hit and the people that we wanted to get involved. And then Brad reached out to them over the summer, and then when we got back to school, and he did all the calling. I kind of just scheduled it in an organized way. Brad had all the ideas. I kind of just put it in a way that made sense as far as historically and kind of group things together. But I really enjoyed it. I learned things in the community, and as we were just talking with Mr. Burnett before, I think the community liked it as more than the students did. I mean, I think the students enjoyed getting on those things, but people being able to share those ideas, I think they got as much out of it as our students did. So.
Yeah, I mean, it was, Ken kind of came to us, I think it was about this time last year, talking about, trying to come up with some different skinnies. And that's how we laid it out was, all right, think of different skinnies, ideas that you would like to teach. So I went home, I thought, you know what, I'm going to come up with something else. And he really didn't give us, he didn't say, it's got to be your area. So the first time I kind of came up with this, and again, I collect vintage pop bottles, so I sit at home, I'm like, all right, how can I incorporate this into a class and make it go for a whole semester, whatever it was, and then just kind of kept mulling it over and talking with different people, talked with Jane and talked with Joe Proctor about different things, and that's how the list kind of started going. And I still have my original sheets. I got 3 or 4 sheets with a whole bunch of names scribbled on it, and I thought, well, maybe I could, maybe this would be something. So I took it to him, and he goes, no. He said, all right. So then I kept thinking about it, and I took it to Eric, and he said, well, and he thought about it for a couple days. He came back and said, yeah, let's do it. And so we took it to him, and he said, oh, yes. The first shot was no good, but we stayed with it, persistent. So you can see there on the list of places that we went and visited, and I think for us, for the semester, it's kind of ideal because we only had 14 kids plus the 2 of us, and so we were able to get into school vans and get around town pretty easy in the limited time that we had. And again, when I went and walked into these businesses and talked to these people, you know, some of them are like, gosh, I don't know. How long do I gotta talk for? Well, 10, 15 minutes. Okay, yeah. You know, so once he kind of said it doesn't have to be an hour. You don't have to have a professional, you know, presentation ready for them. Just, you know, just kind of share information with them, and people were pretty receptive to it. So very pleased with how it turned out. You know, I think the kids kind of learned something. And the quote on the top of the paper there is actually from the third day of class. We went down to Star Drug, and Lynn Appletree was showing us his Wilton collection of everything that he has gathered or been given, you know, that has to do with the town of Wilton and everything. And that is something that he said, and it stuck with me the whole semester. And it is kind of little motto, I think, for our class was, you know, it doesn't matter how long they've been here, but, you know, now they're a part of the history as well. So you can kind of see the list of speakers that we had. And again, these are just some of the names I came up with, and people that said yes, and I did have some people say no, but you know, we wanted to try and get down to the Wilton Cafe. We thought maybe Chili would have a story to share, you know, about, you know, how his family came to be in Wilton. You know, they didn't have to be historically Wilton, but, you know, a different story to share.
Or pancakes.
Yeah, he offered to make our class pancakes. We just never got that figured in. So I'll give Eric credit though. He put together a Google Classroom for us, and every day that's kind of how we kept the kids in line and how they knew what to do. And they, of course, they always wanted to go someplace. You know, hey, we're going someplace today. We're going someplace. No. We got somebody coming in. And we were just talking before. I think there were only 2 weeks the whole semester where we either didn't go someplace or somebody came in and talked to us. So we kind of kept the kids moving, and I think they were pretty receptive of it. So.
Yeah, we spoiled them at the beginning because it was nice out, and so we went to, I don't know, we were on like 2 trips a week for the first like 4 weeks. And then as it got colder, we would bring people in, or we'd only go on 1 trip a week, or it had to be an indoor place, just because it was a little more difficult. As far as some of the classroom stuff, we had them do a genealogy project. The county has records, all of who are deceased, so they try to trace their genealogy either through that or through their family. We had them do an Iowa history, so they looked at famous people from Iowa. We let them do one historically important person, and then one who could be maybe just like a celebrity. You know, Ashton Kutcher was one that popped up there. And so they did that. That was kind of our final project, how we wrapped it up. So we started here in Wilton, then we kind of expanded to Cedar County and Muskegon County, and then we expanded all the way to the state of Iowa.
It's kind of neat what you can find online. My dad gave me a copy of the Henry Wilderson book and the Wilton Moscow Yesteryear book from '76. And just by some luck, stumbled across it online, which actually was great for us because then we could link it on our classroom, and then the kids have access to it without having to give them the book or make copies or, you know, read passages aloud. They were able to just get online and read some of that stuff. So we had them read about, you know, the Wilton Fair and just some of the different things that, you know, used to happen, you know, that were around. So I know there were things that we didn't really get to, we didn't touch on. I know the one day, it was kind of a rainy day, but we had them go on a little scavenger hunt around the school, had about 5 or 6 different little historical places. I think we sent them into Mr. Burnett's office, and they used their cell phones, and they took pictures of the old pictures of the school that are inside on the wall there in the office. And I just happened to come across it. The flagpole south of the gymnasium is from one of the old country schools in the area, so that's kind of how that one came about. So just some different things.
Yeah, it's really cool. That's what the skinny class has been such a great opportunity. You can just tell, listen to these guys how exciting it is, and then it just gets the kids going. What would you do differently the second time? I hope you're planning on teaching this again down the road. What would you do differently?
You know, we were just talking about it today.
Yeah.
With the class sizes, we probably would co-teach it just because of the logistics. You would have to have a bus for those days. So it might become my thing. I'd probably, as a personal perspective, I'd probably spend a little more time on the state of Iowa and just kind of dive into that and maybe do this. The whole skinny was pretty much, other than the trips, was student led. Like, we didn't teach a whole lot. You know, we would give them a topic or idea or a passage from one of those books, and they'd read. And then we talk about it, or have them journal, and do different things. So there wasn't, like, very rarely did Mr. Buckle that I teach in front of the classroom. So I would probably change it a little bit just to get some more of that Iowa history, so they'd have to be more aware of some of those things. other than that, I thought it was pretty, like I said, I love getting the people in. Some of my favorites was Steve Meyer from the Junction.
Yeah.
He did a great, he was fantastic. He was just fun to listen to, just great stories, talked about the Made Right and the history of Made Right on Muscatine, and then the Junction and his, what he's done. And then Jared Grooms obviously was, he was a good time too, just because he told just some more colorful stories of
Moscow is such a happening place.
Yeah.
That's what we found out. So
I didn't know that either. Yeah.
I liked having Keith Peterson. I mean, it's a gentleman I've known for a long, long time. And he talked about Sunbury. And so again,
Oh, yeah.
once we got into December, we kind of started looking outside of Wilton, some of these other little towns around, you know, and again, Moscow and Sunbury might be two places the kids might not think about as bustling, you know, happening little towns, but, you know, at some point they probably were. And so that was kind of neat. And Jeff Coffin, it took me all semester, but we finally, a couple texts back and forth, and the one, in fact, he sent me a text and said, "I'm standing in front of the White House right now. I have a meeting, I'll call you back." So I'm like, well, all right, this is going to be interesting. So to have him come in again, I think most of you have probably heard Jeff speak before, and I mean, the passion that man has for the area is phenomenal. So.
And for Stacy. Would you guys have any questions? I don't want it to be short.
I would say, no, that is
Mr. Buchwald's got to get to the
wonderful.
game.
Cool.
I know I did post, or try to post pictures from where we went and speakers we had on my personal Facebook account and personal Twitter account. I know the school, you know, did their fair share of liking and sharing those and retweeting those. And I had friends of mine outside, you know, I had a couple people that know that I'm a math teacher ask if I also became a history teacher or whatever, and so I would have to explain to them, they are teachers themselves in other districts, and I'm like, that'd be so neat, you know, if our district could do something like that for a class for our kids. So I think the skinny idea is definitely something that's kind of unique to what we're doing right now.
You heard Mr. Grunder say too, that Google Classroom's been a really progressive platform in terms of putting stuff together. I mean, we'll have to show that to the board sometime, how that works too.
yeah, it's very slick. It's much more, it's simplified. It's much more user friendly for the students and the teacher. It's limited in what you can do compared to like a Canvas that we have, but I do like it for its simplicity. So.
Yeah, no, I just keep them in the loop on it too.
Yes.
You guys have any questions for me? Well, thanks, guys. I'm glad it worked out.
Ooh,
You bet.
that is great.
You bet.
Thank you.
Grant and his people.
Grant's peeps, all right.
How are we?
Good.
The grant sent to me, and you should have it attached in the folder,
Yep.
as far as the budgetary piece, and also the drawings that Dave, where's Dave at? All right, that Dave put together too, in terms of the observatory specs. I don't know which one you want to start with, but let's go over each of those. Which one do you want to start
Well,
with? You want to
so what we've done is it was requested of us that we have an itemized budget to present to you exactly where the costs are originating from and from what. So what we've done is, in the interim, we went through a comprehensive review of the instrumentation with High Point Scientific and their experts there, and we've done a heck of a lot of work. And part of that came out of the discussion that Joe Burnett and I had, where the discussion of the ICN room came up. And that came up shortly after the meeting, the last meeting. And out of that discussion, we truly do feel that the best direction to go with this in the project is that hybrid approach. So in that hybrid approach, we will utilize the ICN room after a remodel. And that ICN room will act as the Observatory Command Center. And the Observatory Command Center will be linked to the new construction, which will be the observatory. Dave has been in extensive talks with Joe Ragatz about how exactly to position it and to locate it, and that has been included in that portion of the packet as well. The design is something that has been gone over. It addresses snow load, it addresses quite a number of things, original issues that were brought up in the last meeting. Something that has developed since the last meeting was the instrumentation improvements. So immediately after having this discussion with Joe Burnett about, hey, you guys can utilize the ICN room, we think that would be a good direction to go. Well, it's an immediate cost savings to the project and to our budget. So I decided to go back to High Point Scientific and say, hey, we just got a huge cost savings. How can we take some of those cost savings and utilize it to increase the capabilities of the observatory to give the students something more? So that's what we've done with the new camera on the DSO imaging module. We feel that camera is going to be something that the students, as far as they want to push it, as much as they want to do, as far as they want to go, as far as imaging and research and utilizing it, they won't be able to max it out. So that's good, because some people kind of joke, but some people kind of laugh, but it's totally possible that you could have a piece of equipment where at some point you kind of hit the table and go, man, I wish I had something different. And I think this truly is an awesome approach to take with the DSO imaging module. And we've also, in our discussion with Shellyak, who is the producer and supplier of the spectrograph for the spectroscopy module, we got information from them in the form of a quote, and along with the quote came a neat little blurb. They said that with the spectrograph that they would provide to us, that we would purchase from them, they're also going to be providing free of charge a brand new state-of-the-art computer program called Demetra that they've just developed, and we will be one of the first entities in the world to utilize it. So that was really, really cool. And my French is a little bit lacking, but it appears to be a very interesting, a very, very, very awesome program, and it does come in English.
C'est magnifique.
Yeah. So that's some very interesting developments that have come along from that. And again, in the interim, we've further developed our PR outreach, as kind of narrowing things down, honing things down. We have a lot of stuff ready to go. We even have a cafe press, so that you all, should we get approval, you all will be seeing that. Awesome shirts and buttons and so on and so forth, and then all of those are linked, with regard to the finances, all those are linked to the PayPal account, so any sort of profit from that is directly funneled off to the PayPal account. So those are developments that have been in the interim. So.
Yeah, Grant's worked with Stacy to make sure everything's correct, like you said, the PayPal account, so I feel good about where that is in terms of how that would function from a legality standpoint. I know Joe Ragatz has been involved in talking to Dave and Grant too, and I think the observatory design is in a better spot than it was, but that's because we got all of our minds together and created that. So I think that's in a good spot.
And I really do. It wasn't something that had originally been in that thought process of how exactly are we going to execute this project as far as the building is concerned. So for that outreach to come and to say, hey, we have this space, and to go there and to have that vision that this room, this space that's underutilized could have new life breathed into it, was, oh, hey, that's something, that was cool. That I loved it. I loved it.
That was a win-win that we preached at the elementary.
That was great. That was great. It was a good feeling walking in there, talking with Joe, talking with Bo. Bo came out, we discussed it, because we're talking about there's so many different moving parts of this project. It's not something that is simple, but in those discussions, it was great. So it's a really good feeling all around.
When you look at the budget piece, and I know you don't have it in front of you, Grant, so I'll just read it, but
Yes.
the bottom line area, which is the last page, which is final projected budget scenarios, that maximum projected budget cost, he has it roughly $68,000, $49 short of that, so I'm just going to say it's $68,000. 10 of that, he had put in there what the upgrades would be to the ICN room. And as I know, I mentioned to you, and I've also mentioned to Grant recently, anything that's ICN related that involves, I like to put in a wall in or doing different things, which is what he has for the cost. I'd like the school to pick up on that, because that's the physical structure, and it's, it's our building. So the project cost per se that he's looking for the blessing for the board to pursue would be roughly 57.6, but a short $58,000.
Right, and that was, that's to say that we have the estimated labor costs. So let's say it's cold, it's nasty, it's bad, something happens, we can't get enough volunteers, we have to get the labor in, and that kind of counts in that labor, so that additional labor cost. So instead of, factoring, instead of subtracting that out, that's why we believe that scenario 2 in the budget, scenario 2 is probably the most conservative out of the target, the most reasonable of the target to have.
We haven't talked about this, and I'm sure you'll cover it when you get there, but it's good business practice to try to fundraise 10% more of what you think the building project will be, because there's always contingency costs that do get factored in.
Absolutely, and that was part of our discussion, Stacy and I, we discussed, and with that, not only we discussed the contingency amount, but we also discussed maintaining the avenues of funding open. So to have that PayPal account remain open, to have that link remain active. Because once we get the art out there, so we have promotional art that's QR code embedded. So the QR code embedded promotional art, we all know, we preach this to children all the time. When you share a picture online, it exists forever. Well, there you go. So we are sharing these pictures online that will be linked to this PayPal account, to this fundraising arm of this project. So it would be best to leave that open so that should somebody encounter it and say, yeah, it's a really great idea, we really like this, how would we go about supporting this? That is maintained open. So we're going to factor in that contingency amount, and then above that contingency amount, maintain that channel open, so that not only that, but should we have another initiative that arises in the future, should we have some expansion that we want to do, something more we want to do, that's already set and ready to go. It requires no further establishment.
What questions do you have as a board? Rob?
So is the plan that you'd have the full project cost raised before you begin any construction?
Correct. And that would be the best way to approach it, just for the ease of everyone, the board, with the school, and us, and we realized that that would be the best approach. That would be the best approach.
Yep. That makes good
And it
business
also allows, as far as execution is concerned, a defined transition between mode of how we're functioning as a committee, as a project committee. So we're in the mode of fundraising. We reach that target. We scale back to fundraising. We increase in our focus in the project execution. So that is actually, just as far as modality, that's good.
How would I envision it if the board were to give the blessing tonight, just, start the fundraising aspect. As soon as they hit their target, I would ask that Grant and his team come back in front of the board and say, hey, we've got to X. Then we would take it to a vote to move forward, so it's officially in the board minutes of, let's go ahead with the project. Tonight's blessing is to see if we can get the money raised, which I have every belief that they will. Once that's in place, the board will vote to say, hey, let's do it. Tonight's just more of a blessing to give them the green light. So that's how I would see it, from here on out. I know you'll work with the school, but
Because
once you reach that target, we'll have you come back.
All of these costs involved, as far as the instrumentation is concerned, is derived from quotes. So it's direct interaction with corporations, with these companies that I spoke with. So these are established, defined costs. So the cost, as far as instrumentation is concerned, is solid. We have expanded the functionality. We have expanded the capabilities. We've added in IR photography. We've added in a better camera. We've added in a new field of study that will add to the learning curve for Mr. Beckley. UVB photometry, which will be a really cool field for them for the students to explore. Instead of looking at one star or splitting 2 stars apart, now they can study entire fields of stars at the same time. That'll be really neat. We've also added in a program called Astrometrica, and that program will allow automated asteroid hunting. So the students will actually be able to take pictures of the sky, input it into this program, and the program will be able to differentiate between known and unknown objects, and then from the known and unknown objects can derive what is a potential asteroid, and the students will actually have the ability to take that information immediately condensed down into a report and submit it to the Minor Planet Observatory, which is the governing body for all near-Earth objects and asteroids and so on and so forth. So the students will have the ability to hunt for and submit their own reports. So that is a credit to the school, that's a credit to the program, that's a credit to the individual student. So that's another really cool avenue we're looking at. And it appears as though the integration into the way that we've designed it is fairly flawless. So.
Seem to have a little knowledge on this subject.
And yeah, just a little.
No, it's to take the quote from Albert Einstein is to say, I have no particular talent, I'm just, just inquisitive. It's great.
It's great, really.
Passionately curious, I suppose the quote. Sorry, I had to think about that for a second. I have no particular talent, I'm only passionately curious. So.
Is the board okay with allowing him to move forward? I mean, is there any objection? That'd be my recommendation.
Do we need a formal motion?
No, just the blessing tonight. The formal motion will come
When
When they raise money, okay.
This is just to.
put us, put a shovel in the ground.
I hope that all of you are ready to have a lot of media interest. I hope. As I have
Positive
said,
media.
positive media interest.
Hey,
As I
we're
have
all
said,
for
as I have said to Denise, I do not know who will pick up on this, but there will be a lot of people who will learn exactly where Wilton is, who we are as a community, what we're doing, because I have looked extensively in the interim between last meeting and now, and we're the only program, we will be the only program of its kind in the nation. So there is no other K through 12 fully functional observatory with a full suite of scientific instrumentation that actually contributes data to the greater world at large. It just doesn't exist. So truly new ground. Really, really exciting.
Excellent.
Yep.
Any other
No.
comments? We'll go for it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd say go ahead.
Ready to have fun, Grayson?
All right.
Good.
Thank you for all your work and everybody on the committee that's
Yes.
Yep, thanks to-
involved too.
Yes, yes.
Really exciting.
Yeah.
You folks over there,
Can we
thank
see your
you.
t-shirts?
Hey!
Yeah.
Look at that.
All right, what does it say?
You've seen the big picture. Yeah.
The Observatory Ambassadors. Like I said, we said at the last meeting, it's awesome. You always want to reach out to the student body and have that student body interaction, because as adults we can come up with all these awesome ideas, and you can have goofy people like me who are just passionate about something, but all that in the end doesn't matter. It's what do the students think of it? What do they want to do with it? How passionate are they? And to have these students step out of the woodwork and say, hey, we think it's an awesome idea. That is the foundation. That is where the actual value begins in this program, in this project. So, thank you.
Yay.
Thanks,
Yay.
guys.
Yay.
You bet.
All right, let's launch a PR campaign. Flip the switch.
All right.
All right.
Well, just as passionate about it as
I was going to say, Mr. Meyer, you get to follow that.
Sure indeed.
I'm so sorry.
Sure indeed.
Mr. Data.
So, and I don't know what your slide number is, or first one. Our Iowa assessment data. So we take our tests every November, and always have the great luxury of getting our information back right before Christmas time to get that all sparkled out here. I give for you the last 5 years of data because it's always nice when you look going across from left to right, you can see how grade levels are doing as far as the third grade group as a cohort. But I always find it more useful to follow them on their angles going down, because then you're following those same angles of kids as they go through there. For example, if I look at reading in their 11th grade year, they were 84.6. The year before that, they were 83.9 as 10th grade. So you can always follow those groups and see if groups have grown, if they've struggled historically. When I look at our ninth grade reading score, that group, if you look at the boys historically struggled. They've always just kind of struggled as a group. Did a very nice job this year. So being kind of the nerd that I am,
I've gone through all of my old files, I went through Mrs. Austin's files, and I found data back through 2002 that had Iowa assessment scores. And I calculated our proficiency in reading, math, and science. This is the highest Wilton has ever scored for number of kids proficient. Now, stuff has changed because when I found numbers from 2002, we only had to report 4th grade, 8th grade, and 11th grade. And they used to not be called the Iowa assessments, they were the Iowa Test of Basic Skills. And then they were always on a percentile rank, so those numbers kind of fluctuated a little bit. And then back in, I think it was around 2007 or 8, they froze that 40% line. That was kind of the number. If you got 41st percentile, that was great. And then this is our 4th year, I believe, using the NSS score as their proficiency number because it's easier to track along there. At the bottom of that page there, and I'll back up one more before I go to that. We were a little alarmed last year with our math scores. You know, they were some of our lower scores that we've had for a while, and you can see we've bounced back from that. Had several 90s show up there in that 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th grade range with those kids. You know, we've always historically been a district that our kids have performed well at the beginning. We seem to have kind of a little dip in the middle, but we always seem to rebound at the end. You know, so I think that's a credit to the system that, you know, we keep working and plugging away. I'd hate to have it the other way. You know, we had low on one end, high in the middle, and then we lost it on the end. So I mean, that's a credit to our system for that. If you look at the bottom of the page there, we're still required by the state to turn in goals for reading, math, and science. And we typically take them from our Iowa assessments because that's the scores that are become the public scores. We turn to the state. Our reading one, we followed that 9th grade group because as 8th graders we were following them and we were looking for them to score above 70%. And they were 76.2, so we met that goal. Our math, we noticed there was a big discrepancy between free and reduced lunch and non-free and reduced lunch. That's one of the numbers we have to turn in. That was at a negative 23%. We've got that down to negative 15. And then the only one we missed on was our science one. We were shooting for 78 and they got 75, so really close. And really you're talking about 1 or 2 kids that are different. So you're talking about class sizes of 60 kids. It's really some small numbers there. So the next 3 pages, and I don't know how those got scanned to you, if they all came as single documents or if they came as one big, long scan. These are growth reports that they send out to us. They're the ones that have the green and the blue and the orange on them. These are the growth reports that they send out after they send us all of the assessment data, because then they start to compile the state averages and they start to compile your AEA averages. So looking at like reading there, for example, if I look at 3rd grade, our district was 85% of our kids were proficient, whereas the AEA was 76 and then the state was 75. Does that make sense? So as you look across there, our proficiency, because everybody's always curious, what do these numbers mean when you compare us to others? So when you start looking here, we're ahead of those grade levels in 7 of those 9 areas. Now, Wilton had more kids proficient than we had at the state level, that we had at the AEA level. And that holds true in math and in science, that we were ahead in all of those grade levels in 7 of those 9 areas. So I feel really good about our scores, but I always want to caution people, this is just one test. You know, we could pick Mr. Hewitt's 2nd hour chemistry class for science and send that to the state, and that would become our state assessments. And I always want to caution people from thinking this has to be the end-all be-all. This is just one measure along the way. So we're sticking our thermometer in our mouth. We're going to see if we've got a cold or not. If we've got a cold, we're going to do some things about it. Okay? So any questions about that? We really had a great year with testing, I do believe. Again, as I said, that and when I say that, we were the highest in reading, math, and science, going all the way back to 2002, that we had the most kids proficient in those years. So things are looking very well for our district from that. I mean, I think that things are showing up academically. And it's, I can't attribute it to any one thing. I just think it's a lot of hard. I mean, a lot of people doing a lot of hard work and doing a lot of good work and doing good work for kids along the way. Now that I say that, Iowa assessments is supposed to be done. They were supposed to be done last year. Iowa had adopted Smarter Balanced. Big push. Legislature said no, so they've adopted a new one called AIR, which is American Institute of Research. One of the companies that put in a proposal along with them filed a claim against it. So that's going to court right now. There's actually been a proposed bill in the state legislature this year to scrap all of that stuff and just make Iowa assessments the state assessments forever in a year. Which is fine, but it's not really aligned to the core. all of our classes now have to be based on core, science, math, social studies, all of that stuff. And there are several questions that show up on there that don't fit, even though they're on there. Example being third grade, there's a question on there about planets. They do nothing with planets until fifth grade. They do, so yeah, that'll change now.
Yeah.
You'll find those planets.
What are we all
But we've got
concerned?
several mismatches like that. You know, that in good teaching practice, how can you say to those teachers, listen, teach planets for a little bit,
Right.
so they know some planet names before you take the test? And I think that's a bad practice, because
I
that's
do
not really,
too.
that doesn't really have good ethics behind it
No.
as far as the teaching practice goes with that. So stay tuned on that, that could change. And then the other change that'll go along with it is they'll move us away from, we take the tests in the fall because we feel like we get good bang for our buck with that information back. Teachers have had a chance to pour through that, and we can look at changing things for the end of the year. Whereas if we start taking it in March and April like they're proposing, we get that stuff back. I get to look all of that stuff, and it won't mean anything when we get back to school in August, because
Right.
everybody's on that go mode again.
Right.
So I hope that doesn't happen, because I think it's been hugely beneficial for our district that we take it that early. I think the kids are a little fresher
Yep.
in the year, but I think we get that benefit from the educator standpoint where we get to look at that information. So tons more if you want it, but I didn't share it with you tonight. I can always come to a work session if you'd want to see some more of that broken down. But any questions about that? That should go out to the public. Well, it'll probably be in the paper a little bit, but that'll go out in the newsletter this next month,
Good.
in the March newsletter. I'll put that in there for them.
My question is more for the principals. Where do you go from here? So seeing this data, what's next?
There are still pockets of areas that we're still, yeah, there are still areas that we still have some pockets in. You know, when you look across our math
There's
scores there,
12%.
our 5th and 6th and 7th grade scores still, I would think are even though on average we're better than that, I still think are lower than I think what we're capable of. You know, that's figuring out, is that a teaching thing, is that a content thing, is that a kids thing? You know, in those areas with that, so.
And they dug into this a couple of times.
Yep.
We've had department level
Yep.
meetings and
Yep.
just to kind of talk about
Yep,
it.
yep. We've got some changes coming to our math, to do a little bit stuff at the high school level with math, so, yeah. It's fun to talk about that stuff.
We've got a plan.
Usually you're in the back end talking about how you're gonna fix this, because there's a lot.
Mhm.
And the other thing, you guys will approve this later on the agenda, is our SIAC
Mhm.
names for that. That'll take place April 24th, which is a Wednesday, that coincides with your guys' work session for that, so I know that's later on.
We've done it in April, or excuse me, March in the past, but spring break.
Yeah,
falls.
spring break falls in that.
So that's why it's a week later.
Shifted that to the end of April, so.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Meyer. Hey, we
you
met 2 out of our
very
3
much.
goals on our APR.
There
Last
you
year
go.
we were over 3, I think.
Yeah, we were 2 or 3 last year too.
No,
We were.
I don't think we were.
Yeah, we did. We
I was
missed
thinking
3.
my evaluation, and we didn't meet that, so we talked about that.
We missed
Remember-
3.
you guys remember that?
Last year.
So I was like, hey, we got 2 out of 3 this year.
What
We
year
made
was it?
progress on it. We didn't
last
miss
Sure,
year.
last year.
I don't know.
I can't remember either. You're fine. Thank you.
Being smart.
You got it.
All righty. We'll move on. Ms.
Hey,
Hicks?
could I let Mr. Snavely go quick? I know Stacy's
Oh,
got something to come up too, but
yes.
try to get him to a ball game in Tipton.
Sure.
That's
So
fine.
we go over the high school
Yes, we
AD
may.
report. Thank you, Mr.
I
Meyer.
may have a junior high game later. Hopefully it should be done by now.
All
Anyway,
right, yes. Mr. Snavely.
yes, thank you. Well, I'll present both my reports. If you have questions, feel free to ask.
Yep.
I'll start with the academic side of things. The Townsend Foundation has provided some funding for us as far as professional development exploration for the future, to do some exploring, I guess, with AIW, which stands for Authentic Intellectual Work. And so you'll hear that acronym come up a little bit. Honestly, there's not a district in our AEA 9 that does AIW, but across the state it's very, very prevalent. And the BLT Building Leadership Team at one meeting just said, you know, I came from an AIW school, and they just said, hey, we'd like to learn more about this. So that's why we went to the Townsend Foundation and asked. So we're actually going to be, as of tomorrow, they're supposed to have signed up. We're going to take a visit to Humboldt, Monticello, and Pella, who are both, the schools have all been doing AIW for a long time. So, you know, what works in one district isn't going to work in Wilton, but we're going to see how those districts, and they're all districts that have been doing this for a long time, how they're, you know, doing it. And then we'll come back and decide, is this something we really want to do? Is this going to be a good fit for Wilton? And if so, how is this going to look? So that's just kind of, you know, during the month of February and March, we'll be taking those visits and then coming back and having some deeper conversation. Wednesday, professional development. We've been really busy with our book study. We've been, we have 4 different books that we're, doing right now. We've done some work with ELL modules, the English Language Learner modules, completing those. All 6 of those have to be done. It's going to eventually be a requirement, so we're kind of being proactive with that. We spent some time in the last couple of weeks looking at the Iowa assessment data, having some team meetings around that. And then we've also been spending some time planning for a skinny for next year. We're really tightening up how that's going to look. And you heard at the beginning of the board meeting about some things that are going on, and we're just trying to keep that zest alive to make teachers excited, and we're in the planning stages of that right now. So that's been good. We've had some, in my report I wrote down just some things about the science bowl. We've had both the junior high and high school science bowl that students have attended and did very well at. We have the honor choirs going on. Students were recognized for that. Last week we had the Pandemonium Band from Cornell College. You followed that on Facebook. That was kind of a nice little surprise. They just said, hey, we want to come and do a concert at your school. And so that was neat to have them going there with that. We have the musical, the play that's in full swing right now. They're working on sets as we speak tonight. I wrote in their parent-teacher conferences are coming up at the end of the month, so that's just something to be thinking about. March 5th is the NHS inductions. Mr. Beans has the ball rolling for that already. And scheduling for next year has started, so we already have due dates set for teachers to turn in course descriptions and things like that, changes as far as that goes for next year. So it's amazing that we're already looking at next year, but we are. So
Yep, it's that time.
any questions on my actual junior senior high board report? Okay. Athletically, it's amazing. We are really at the end. I mean, at the end of our winter season. I know this past weekend it was kind of a marathon with Tara knows, with the little kids wrestling club Friday night, and then followed by district wrestling here on Saturday. It was kind of a crazy day, and then you throw the snow on top of it. But wrestling is winding down. They did play second at conference, won their sectional in Mediapolis, and then qualified 10 wrestlers. And as of Saturday, we did qualify 5 for state. So they're planning right now to be heading down to Des Moines on Wednesday night for that. Boys basketball, they play tonight at Tipton, 8 o'clock. So they win, they'll play later in the week. Our girls basketball team plays tomorrow night here at 7 o'clock versus West Branch. If they win, they'll play later in the week. I believe it's Friday. The boys is Thursday and the girls is Friday. And then junior high basketball is, I think after tonight's game, we have 4 games left, 2 this week, 2 next week. And then they'll be finishing up their season. Looking ahead, we have the variety show coming up on February 26th and the 5-12 band concert on February 27th. So it's amazing we've come this far, but here we are at the end of the winter season. So questions about anything athletically? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I often
All
say
right.
we crank down athletics, but then March is, end of February is kind of our fine arts season, because then that's an opportunity to do that
To be
stuff.
able
So
to.
the next couple of weeks we'll visit with that too. All right.
All right.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you
Stamer.
very much. All right.
No, go.
No, please.
Stacy,
You want Stacy to go next?
It's up to you.
I can be last. All right.
Go ahead. Go ahead,
You're
please.
going.
Thank you.
Number 5, this is taxation, no, number 8.
Number
Taxation funds. Any questions on any of those accounts? Have the general fund management, our bond construction account, which I'm trying to spend down, and our construction, our local option sales and service tax, the regular one and the construction one, and a couple in debt service. All taxation funds. Any questions on any of those? Hearing none, I'll move to number 9, which is instructional support levy program. The revenues at the top, our budget in the middle of the first page, what we've spent year to date at the bottom, and then what's remaining on the top of the second page. Any questions on ISP? Number 10 is the self-insurance fund. And has a breakdown between medical, dental, and vision in the lower left-hand corner. And this program continues to do well for us. Latchkey, report number 11, usage at the top, which the total program usage went down, but that usage decrease was in casual, which that doesn't bring in a lot of money. The actual before school only, after school only, before and after actually went up by 1. And we are continuing to see our monthly revenues exceed our expenditures. And that balance is continuing to go up. It's almost double from the beginning of the school year. So, any questions or comments on Latchkey? And then number 12 are the Latchkey expenditures for the month of January, excluding wages and benefits. And report number 13 is a nutrition program report with the usage at the top for lunch and breakfast programs for month and year-to-date, which year-to-date would be the school year-to-date. And then the financial on the second page. And that balance just continues to grow as well. So, and with a few things that we budgeted are going to be way over, like the a la carte. So, any questions or comments? And number 14 would be the nutrition fund, trade vendor report for January. And again, anything expenditures for that period in addition to salary and benefits. And then 15, the first page is the activity fund. And negative amounts would be drama speech, which she is actually doing 2 nights of concession stands this week, so that should help with that. And elementary vocal, they're always in the negative for supervision, and that ends up being consumed by the junior senior vocal at end of the school year. And robotics club, he too is doing some concessions that should help that negative balance. And then we still have spring and summer canteen negative because there were some fees paid across all concessions or canteens, and of course those seasons have not begun. So, any questions on the activity report? Then you have your music and your athletic to the far right columns. Summary of those. And FFA Enterprise account, and then our flex spending, which we keep local instead of with the insurance company, and then the agency fund, which are funds that are accounted for in our office, but we do not technically own. 16 would be the period vendor reports for the funds that we just reviewed. And there's 5 pages of that.
So, Stacy, I got a question. Is the fundraising for the observatory going to be a agency fund then, or how is that going to be accounted for?
That's a good question. I would say yes. To begin
Okay.
with, it'll be an agency fund, so you can see how it's progressing.
Okay.
And then once we get it, so that there's funds there, we'll have to transfer that to one of our building project
Project
funds
funds.
to
Okay.
actually do the construction.
Okay.
And then number 17 is the co-curricular driving for the January-February pay period. Several classroom activities, and then the Special Olympics under other, they pay for the entire cost of that, including mileage. And then our driver summary at the bottom. And then next, the extra payroll bills. So anything that's not in a contract that is presented to me for payment goes on this sheet. Any questions or comments on any of the extra payroll for the February payroll? And then board bills, starting with report number 19. And board bill listing is pretty large this month for February. Lots of Townsend Fund ordering, which is a good thing. So I believe general fund expenditures go through the first 12 and a half pages. And then we have a few expenditures out of the bond construction. account for our flagpole lighting and some water fountains that were purchased and then installed in the elementary with the drinking bottle that were not in the regular project. And then we have some local option sales and service tax expenditures. And then Fund 34 is still the money left that we set aside for the demolition from our revenue bonds that we're still trying to spend down as well. So any questions on any of the bills on the 13 pages?
I'll make a motion to approve the bills.
Second.
All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, I'm gonna go meet with Grant to get the
Thank you.
PayPal account transferred to the school.
Perfect.
There's some info he needs from me. And then I gave Joy info about the audit, where you need to look if I don't get back in here by then.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you, Stacy. All right,
My turn.
Mrs. Austin, you're up.
Kindergarten preschool registration is on pace to, again, be quite strong. Fast test screening results for winter, if you scroll down, you will see those. Similar to our Iowa assessment data, it is, again, strong. Winter, there are some winter numbers that are lower than our fall numbers, but when Mr. Meyer broke all these down for us. So then when you look at the bottom, the winter to winter comparison is, of course, where we look next. Whenever we see something that we don't like, or we do, we look to see if that is a trend at the same time of the year in the past. And amazing, I think, if you look at the 3rd through 6th grade 4-year trend, our scores 4 years ago to where they are now. And interestingly enough, you don't, K1-2 always has been strong and steady and kind of is ballpark where it always was. But if you look at 3, 4, 5, and 6,
Yep.
That's amazing.
Big improvement.
Very
isn't that something?
Yes.
And similar to the question that everyone asks, and I've talked about this a lot, people want to know how we did. Well, I don't know exactly, but I do think iBlock has a lot to do with that. 95% skill development work just has,
Good.
but our teachers are working their tails off, and
Oh,
they're
yeah.
tending to a lot of things that they
Combination
just
of things.
didn't before. Right.
Always.
However, to answer your question, Rob, then when we apply that same thing with the math scores, I think we were headed down the wrong track, because once we got the math scores back and we put those alongside of the data teams that the teachers do 2 of the 4 Wednesdays a month, when I crossed those 2 data points, we thought what we needed in math was what we have in reading. We thought we wanted to go down the intervention track. However, when we crossed those 2 data points, and even though there are only 2 data points, it kind of looked like we had a lot of kids that needed it, a lot of kids that weren't getting it in math, not just a few. And when your intervention numbers get too large, then you need to look at whole group instruction.
Right.
So then we got Tammy involved, and she gave a couple universal screening measures across math. And we found some stuff that was just crazy. Stuff that we, just holes, just gaps, things that we assume a 3rd grader knows, that many of them did not. So whether that means we have to reteach or we have to look at how we, there's just all kinds of things now that leads to. So what we're going to do is, instead of work on interventions, we kind of are going to pull that horse back a little bit and look at universal instruction. And so next year's PD, we're planning that calendar right now, and we're looking at what our big rocks are. Because in math, we had the AEA come, and we've had teachers do a lot of work on their own, and our model teachers have been working with math. So we have these pockets of people that are doing great things, but it's not happening every teacher, every grade level. So we have to pull what's working and put that against our data and our research base and figure out exactly what we have to make sure is going on in every classroom to get those kids where they need to be. So that's what we're gonna do to improve our math scores. We're gonna really look at our universal instruction and figure out what is the best at different points. You know, our lesson plan design is good, what we're teaching them is good, but there's something that's different, and you can really see that in their math data teams. So that's where we're headed with that. Sorry, that was a long story, but
I like that.
yeah, we're kind of nerds in that way.
I wonder
Which is
if it
good.
has
You guys have to worry about money.
I wonder if it has to do with the switch to the Common Core and that completely
Maybe.
new way of teaching it. I mean,
Maybe. And some
I see a lot of
grabbed
benefits.
it.
Yeah, I see a lot of benefits to that, but I wonder if it's creating some
Yeah, some
unexpected
gaps.
goals too.
And possibly that's what we'll find. It's just really going to be interesting to have the teachers dig and see who's doing what and what. Because my scores are here high and yours are here. What do you do? How do you do it and how do I do it? And we're, you know, and we're throwing against research. But Tammy's going to help us with that, which is good because she's all on that. Sorry, I birdwalked that. But these are all reading. This fast score is all reading. But I just really am pleased with how that has improved. And I think we'll continue to do so. Back in my report, Leader Me, we're working hard with that right now. It kind of goes ebbs and flows. Ken Nelson from Leader Me was out here on January 31st and met with all the action teams, which I listed the 4 action teams. And those are just kind of the topics of how we get Leader Me embedded in different areas, and all the staff is divided into one of those 4 areas. So they're either doing staff boosters focused on professional learning, the environment, and some things are permanent, some are going to be outside the building, and some are things that we change monthly or yearly within the building. Shared leadership, that's the jobs that the kids will be signing up for, and they're already doing it in their classrooms, but as a building. And then leadership events. On our website now, there is a live stream under the elementary tab that you can see every Wednesday morning when the kids come on and do it's the announcements and what the theme of the week is, and it's great. The menu, it's really good. It's again, student leadership, and then with the whole school says the pledge together. So it's kind of fun. That link is on there. And then, that day's wrong, it's March 19th and 20th, we go to Easton Valley. I attend the principal one on the 19th, and then Jane Owens and Jamie Caffrey are our 2 Lighthouse team leaders, and they go to the one on the 20th. So we're moving on that. Coins for Caring, that's Miss Dory. She's again collecting money for the University of Iowa Children's Hospital. PTO hosted Family Fun Night on that snowy last Thursday, but it worked out fine. We had a good turnout. I think everything was well attended, and we pair that with Riff Night. So you can't, that's always a success. And then the final list there are just dates. And as you can see, it's going to be crazy coming up. Mr. Serrata's finishing the skating unit. We always appreciate PTO sponsorship of that because...
Is anyone broken?
Not yet. I know. We're not done yet.
Yeah.
They are, especially the 5th graders, they're just like moving dominoes the first time. And now they're shooting the duck and running around each other. I mean, it's just fun. It's a great experience. I'm really happy to do it.
Where do we do that?
And the band was good from Cornell. They were great. We had a guest speaker from Alaska talking to our 5th and 6th graders. A lady in her school wrote the book Recess at 20 Below, and that amazed them, that the difference. They have to call the kids in when a moose comes across the playground. You have to have flashlights out because during a lot of the time, when they have, it's dark. So, yeah, that was fun. And I guess the rest of it, the last one is kind of fun. We again have 5 people going to New Orleans, again, to keep up. I think that's a key to our success as well. I really think it's great that we have that opportunity to send teachers out of here because they see how really progressive people do things, and they really understand how important it is to know more and do more, know better and do better. So I appreciate that. Wait.
Thank
Talk to Jamie.
Any questions from
Any
Mrs. Austin
questions?
or comments, questions? No? If not, thank you very much. We will move on to action items.
Yes, consent agenda number 1.
All righty.
3 of the employees listed under A, B, and C have requested to participate in the early retirement incentive that the board offered. That's first 3. Letter D and C, Haley Teague is resigning her position as head associate because she's qualified to be the social worker, and that's who we offered the position to. And then Samantha Van Sloten, our third grade teacher, is following her husband to a different job. Number 3, under job descriptions, I reviewed this with Ryan Lilienthal, and don't have any tweaks to that. So that's it under consent agenda number 1 this month.
Motion to approve consent agenda number 1.
Second.
All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
All right, well, I do have a couple things to share under consent agenda number 2 in terms of board policy this month. If we start with 405.4, licensed employee continuing contracts. Margaret and Larry at ISFIS are really good to work with. If I ever have any questions, we subscribe to ISFIS, which is the School Finance Consortium. She's a whip with policy. And I know that there's been changes at the state that took place last year. And one of those changes with licensure is that if we hire a teacher from any other school in Iowa, in the past, if they've had at least 3 years' experience, they don't necessarily have to be a probationary teacher for 2 years. They can just be for 1. But the state law changed, saying no matter how many years' experience you have in another district, you must have at least 2 years' experience in your current district to go from probationary to tenure.
Okay.
So in 405.1, our policies, isn't that funny? We just had this conversation in the last couple of months about policies. Our policy needs to reflect what the state law is, and that's 2 years. So on 405.4, excuse me, I think I may have said 1. 405.4, wherever it says, and I think it's in the second paragraph, first 3 years of a new license, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. New employees, previous school serve 1 year probationary period, that needs to go to 2.
Okay.
Okay, Joy, do you see where that is? To strike that, because we'll need a second reading next month, even though it's law. And the other one, which mirrors that, is 405.9, which is licensed employee probationary status. I guess that's one of my frustrations a little bit with the state too. They could lump both of these into one policy, but they gotta have 2.
Yeah, you think.
Poor trees.
Which is
Yeah,
why school
poor
districts
trees.
get tripped up on policies if they end up in court, because they're
Yes.
so ambiguous and
Right.
all over the place. So, the same thing on 405.9, where it says, in the first paragraph, I believe it's the second sentence,
Yeah.
Third line, yeah.
they'll serve 2-year probationary status. So 405.9, Joy, if we could change that as well. The other policy that I would like the board to look at,
One second.
go ahead, Rob.
So.
Is there another phrase?
In 405.9, it says the board may waive the probationary period.
Or
Do we want to
extend it.
keep that? Because, I mean, the law says we can't, then we can't. I mean,
Right.
that's-
Let's read this together. What sentence are you on?
The first sentence,
First sentence,
second
second paragraph.
Says only the board has discretion to waive the probationary period. So if we don't have that legal authority, then,
And we may extend it.
You know what's interesting though too? Yeah, again, the ambiguity here is the board, the law in the past was always 1 year regardless. The board couldn't waive that. So why it was even in here in the first place to be able to waive it, whether it's
Right.
1 year or 2 years
Current
is,
law.
what's that?
We can't waive it under the current law either, right?
Correct.
it's kind of weird.
So we can strike, I agree, Rob, we could strike that sentence because that's not,
Iowa
Well-
Code
Practice.
2007.
The second sentence, too, well,
Yeah.
second
The whole
sentence.
paragraph.
it is true the board may
Third.
extend the period of,
Oh, okay,
Right.
okay.
But the deleting the part about the waive, though.
Okay. Well, then you have to change you have to take out in the third sentence, the board will make the decision to extend, so you need to take out to extend.
here's where I believe the original waive sentence in place is. In the past, it's typical practice that school districts would allow, or not allow, but require 2 years probationary for any new employee regardless of their years. Okay, and we've done this, so this is where it's kind of clicking with me. if we had an employee that came in and they had 10 years' experience somewhere and they went through their first year and everything's fine, we'd recommend that we waive going into the second year as probationary status. So that's where that came into play. Now, since has to be 2 years, that waive isn't applicable. But in the past, we did waive it for some teachers that
Are you
had.
still waiving it from 2 to 3 though? Because it doesn't have to be 3.
3 is just for
3 is for
brand
new
new
teachers.
teachers in the
Others,
state.
it's just 2 no matter what.
Right.
But
And
you
the
couldn't
board
give them
cannot
3.
waive, I mean, if we have a brand new teacher that we hire, they have to have 3 years.
Right.
Yeah, and if they go to a different district from here at any point after that, they've got to be probationary for 2. There's a little bit with the chapter 20, and I don't know the angle, but tenure versus non-tenure, there's certain rights that tenured employees have versus non-tenured employees when it comes to termination.
Yeah.
So last year's legislative session kind of strengthened a little bit toward the district, for better or for worse, in those cases. It's up to the board. If you want to take out that line about, waiving the probationary period, I think that's acceptable.
Well, I think we probably should, and then, again, in this, now be the second sentence of that paragraph, take out the reference to waiving.
Correct. The board will make the decision to extend or,
To extend,
To extend.
period, a licensed employee's probationary status.
yep.
So strike the or waive.
Yep.
Right.
Good catch, Rob. Had it remained in, the board wouldn't have that ability anyway. So
Yes.
we always like to make
Yeah.
current practice
What we're doing.
policy.
Yeah.
Right.
No, okay. Then the other one, it's been an interesting year with policy because, boy, there's been a lot of changes and just tweaks, trying to keep it up to speed. 405.6. What I would recommend, and this is completely a board decision, but here's the verbiage I would recommend here, and I'll read it to you because it's just 3 sentences in 3 paragraphs. Determine the assignment of each licensed employee is a responsibility of and within the sole discretion of the board. Okay, I would change that to administration. In making such assignments, the principals shall consider, in making such assignments, the administration shall consider the qualifications of each licensed employee and the needs of the school district. Let me give you an example. If Mrs. Austin recommends to me that the first grade teacher and a second grade teacher flip, that should be a decision that she recommends to me versus, hey, to the board, can we move the first grade teacher to second? Because that's our current practice, okay? In the second sentence, so what I'm recommending in the first sentence, anywhere it says board, put administration. And I think there's 2 spots.
Yep.
In the second sentence, I would say it should be the responsibility of the building principals to make recommendations to the superintendent regarding assignment of licensed employees.
Yep.
Mr. Snavely comes to me and says, hey, I'd like Mr. Buckwald to teach X. Okay, but that recommendation comes to me on where they should be. Right.
We don't need to be involved.
And then this, the last sentence remain the same. Requirements, the master contract, et cetera, are in place.
Yep.
Because again, our current practice is every time we have an employee that's in a different role in the district, we don't have even a section on the board
No,
from
For
first
those.
grade to second grade or
Right.
whatnot.
a lot of it is just informational.
It is. And ultimately, if there's for lack of a better phrase, a disgruntled employee that wishes to discuss with the board the decision that the administration made, they have that prerogative. So, are there questions on that? Are you okay with those tweaks? But that's what I see for this
We'll
month.
see it, yeah. Next month we'll see that.
So those
we-
3 will come back as a second reading in March.
Yep.
So I would make a recommendation to approve consent agenda 2 with the noted verbiage updates.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
All right. Consent agenda number 3 is pretty much, it's laid out there. Items 1, 2, and 3 are employees who have requested the district early shouldn't say early anymore, just district employee retirement program. Bev Ryder, Susan Shirk, Deb Norton. Number 4 is our SIAC committee members and the meeting date, which Mr. Meyer talked about in his report. Number 5, we discussed this at the work session about the policy 801.3, the disposition of obsolete equipment, how we would utilize a different source of that. You know, we're looking at doing something with the online venue. Certainly that could change in the future, but that's what we'd like to pursue. And so you can see the verbiage tweaks that we made there. Number 6 is the second reading of policy 504.6, fundraising activities. We had the first reading, I believe in October, but it didn't make our agenda. So the office caught that. So because we have to do everything twice, it's just a lot of paperwork trail. And then number 7 is the fiscal year 17 audit. And as Stacy said, Joy can go over any questions that you may have, Tony being the former
Not
CPA.
question, but she said.
Always look at that
Go to
page.
pages 69 through 72 for the auditor's findings.
Right, that's what we always look at. Oops, it takes can you go a bit faster without scrolling?
Actually, the most important page is page 6.
6?
Set the opinion. It
You make me
says,
go all the way back.
the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material aspects the respective financial positions of the government. Yeah. When it says things look cool, that's the important page.
But they always want,
Things look cool.
they always want to tell us what.
Well, there's always management recommendations too. and
Right.
Those are things we could potentially improve. In a lot of
Correct.
cases, we don't have the staff to do what.
Correct.
Exactly.
It's usually
Check and
the
balance.
same.
We don't have the sufficient staff to do all the checks and balances that,
Right, and it's always
and
the
that's very common
same,
for smaller entities.
the same concerns every year. I mean, there's nothing new.
Segregation of duties is always
Correct.
a concern when you have a small staff.
Well, and conflict of interest, maybe.
Yeah. Did they get that right? I didn't.
You and I.
7,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm on page
Which-
70 and 71. Or, yeah, 69 is where it starts, part
Yeah,
of the
69 and 70.
scheduled finding, I don't know what they call it. Findings related to the financial statements.
Right,
That's page 69, 70, and 71.
right. And as long as there's nothing new, I think we're aware and we do the best we can, correct, Joy?
Yeah, and you know what? We get
I hope
high
she doesn't
marks each
answer no
year.
to that.
She's like,
No.
Well, I'll give you credit. Between her and Stacy, maybe they do an outstanding job.
Yes, they do, with what.
now you have to say yes, that's fine.
And Clarissa.
And Clarissa, yeah.
yes, yes.
Anybody
There's
that
another one,
works
so
on that.
It's helping with the segregation duties.
With
Right,
having
well, always,
one
always
correct.
having another person
Oh,
will
definitely.
help that.
All right,
Are there any questions on the audit?
no, I don't think so.
All right, that's it under consent agenda number 3.
Move to approve consent agenda number 3.
Second?
All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, before we,
Well, let's go to the individual action item.
Okay.
And on the table is the superintendent sharing agreement. If you want to pull that up. Linda had a phone call earlier.
yes, I apologize for, it's on page
Oh,
34.
okay, yeah.
I took a call from Julie Rivera from the Durant School Board, President of the School Board, which obviously they were going to their meeting, right? Theirs is at 6, ours is at 5:30, so I don't know if she remembered.
Whatever, it doesn't, yeah.
Anyway, she had one comment on the shared agreement that she would like for us to change. It's just 2 words. It is sharing the car. We are talking,
Which paragraph?
3.
3,
Okay.
sorry. It's here, July 1st to December 31st, Wilton will provide Burnett, and January 1st to June 30th, Durant. They would like to switch Wilton and Durant. They would prefer, because of their fleet usage, they have less usage in the summer.
So they want to go from July 1st to December 31st?
Yes.
Okay.
I think we
Yes.
can probably live with that.
And I think they're just gonna initial it, the change and do the change, but yes, so they want, so instead of Wilton from July 1st to December 31st, it says Durant will, and then then January to June should be Wilton. Yeah, Durant wants it July to December. Just because of their usage. You know, we know that we have a car that we can dedicate for him, and so that's their concern. So that's what she wanted to voice, and I said, I think we can do that. They were just gonna initial it and do the same on their part. So, if that's okay, that's the only thing that, otherwise when, you know, it was given to them back, went up with our concerns and questions and comments, it was fine, but that was the only thing that they had talked about. So. Was there any other concerns, questions? Okay. If not, I'll entertain a motion.
It's individual.
Mm-hmm. So I'll make a motion to approve the sharing agreement between Wilton and Durant for the superintendent position with the change noted on the car where Durant would provide the car for the first 6 months of the fiscal year and Wilton the second 6 months.
Second?
All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right.
Number 8, under hirings, 2 this month, Haley Teague is our social worker to finish out the year, and Sarah Anderson is our high school football cheer coach. The reason the salary is TBD until we get done with negotiations this spring. Under the maintenance side, we set a maintenance committee meeting in early March. I think it's the 7th. I have to go look at my calendar. I thought we scheduled that for like
I'll tell you here.
7th. Visiting with Joe today about the boiler bids. They're still working on that, and so they're, according to Joe, talking to the company, they'd like to have the bids and everything approved mid to late March. So we should be good as far as getting that done this summer. But yeah, with the maintenance committee, we've got a lot of ideas in terms of summer projects, and
Yes, the 7th.
is it? Good.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. So nothing else really to report there. Under the pool board, is there anything to share?
We're looking at it. Oh, Alec, right, right, and just, I don't know if we mentioned about replacing the roof before.
No.
We're talking
We did,
about,
yeah,
I
talk
mean,
about that, yeah.
yeah, but I think we're kind of, I think we're going to do it.
Yeah, I'm just waiting.
Timing and
Yeah,
when
yeah.
and availability of someone to do it.
Yeah.
Has he been able to get some bids out then, or?
There's not a lot
Right.
that will do it.
Yeah, I think you're just kind of waiting though. I mean, it wasn't a big push.
Correct.
I mean, it was, we'll get some bids here later on, I think, and then.
Do you see that being a summer project, or just sometime fiscal year?
Probably after the 1st of July, I think, is what they were
Okay.
looking at, so. Then I think,
Because we put more money in the budget.
yeah, because we're looking
With
at
the
more
allocations,
allocation next year to
yes.
pay from the city and the school to pay for the roof. so.
Yes,
Well, that'll be good to know in our maintenance committee,
Yeah.
because we
Yes.
can budget that through our
Right.
save.
yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes, that is correct.
All right. Legislatively, time's flying. The legislative forum is on March 10th. If either of you two or anybody wants to
I was
attend,
going to try to.
it's in the community room. If you can attend and you have any questions, shoot them to me. I always go, and I always visit with, our legislators that day, so don't feel like you have to be there, but if there's anything specific you want me to ask, let me know. Of course, their session's full swing. They haven't set SSA yet, but it looks like it's going to be 1% unless something drastically changes. Operational sharing looks like that's going to go through. They're looking at adding, with that, I think I mentioned this in the work session, but the social worker as an operational share position. So that's something we could share with Durant and be a waiting of 3 students. And it'd almost pay for itself by sharing that position. So that's something we'd have to look at.
Yeah.
I emailed Bobby Kaufman about that, and I also and Margaret Buckton about the calendar
Oh,
that we talked about as
Yes.
far as start date, and there is some
Yes.
traction on getting that changed, so it's the Monday after State Fair, not the specific date. So we'll see what happens with that. Bobby got back to me and said, yeah, I support that. That's, hope that it goes through, but who knows? I do want to mention, this isn't legislative necessarily, but we have a city council joint meeting with the school board each year in the spring. You know, we got a couple options. We could try to do it at our March meeting. It does really pinch our monthly meeting. I know you feel that because I do too. I'm trying to get done in 45 minutes, which if you want to do it, you know, we started at 5 in the past. We could do that, or, well, I guess it doesn't matter to me because I'm around, but sometimes during spring break, or I don't know when, the council has that second meeting of the month, okay, on the 4th Monday.
No, that's a possibility.
I'm just saying, we could have our city council meeting, we could have a work session from 5 to 6 on Monday night, then go to the council meeting from 6 to 7.
On what date?
Well,
It's usually, is it 2 weeks
it's the
after?
4th Monday, because
Fourth
we
Monday,
go
so-
1st and 4th.
Okay. yeah, I
So
won't
we're
be here.
talking March, well, obviously March. Right,
Yes, if I can pull my calendar over here.
okay, so March.
Talking the 4th.
1,
weekend
2,
of
March, the 4th Monday in
Would
March
it be
is
the
the
26th?
26th.
Yes.
Yeah.
I won't be here, but that's fine.
I think it's a goodwill thing, so if you can't make it,
We'll be in Wisconsin.
good for you. It is during spring break, but like I said, not an issue for me. We can talk about that at our work session too, here in a couple weeks. But you want me to try to maybe, you guys want to think about that?
I,
We'll try and do it then. That be
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Our next meetings, it's not on here, but we have a special meeting, unfortunately, this Thursday at 5:30. If you could be here a little early, 5:15, Brett and Ski will be here and kind of maybe walk through what how that will look that night for expulsion hearing. But we'll have a special meeting, we'll go into closed session, come out. You guys have been through this before, that's how that'll work. We also have a special meeting on Wednesday, the 28th, at 5 p.m. to exchange interests with the WEA. I sent to you a copy of what our interests were in the past. In my opinion, especially in the beginning, I think everything lines up from what we've done in the past. But if you have any recommendations, you remember getting that email from me? Let me know, otherwise I will print that off and we will go with that the 28th. That meeting will be relatively short with the WEA because we have parent-teacher conferences that night, and if you remember the high school, so we can't really dive in. But we did think that in March, on that Tuesday, March 13th at 5, that'll be kind of the big night where we really dig into it. So, and hopefully, we'll know our SSA by that point too. We know our insurance, but we need to know what the allowable growth is. Our next work session then will follow that special meeting on the 28th. It's good that you guys like each other. We meet a lot. We'll be at 5:15 that night, or whatever time it gets over, with the IBB stuff. But we'll have a work session after that. Our next regular meeting is Monday, March 12th at 5:30 p.m. here, and our IBB is the next night. And then, bless you, we will
Thank you.
look at having, I'll check with Mr. Chris Ball and see if we can have our joint meeting that 4th Monday.
Okay,
But that's it.
sounds good.
Okay, hit everything.
I'd make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Good work, guys.
All right, now,